So we're back with another Build Biology. It's all about straight line performance and brutal horsepower. Let's go see what we have. Brandon, what's up?
What's up, man?
What did you bring today?
I brought you my 1994 Ford Mustang drag car.
Sick. 1994. And we're not going to make any Mustang jokes today.
Not yet.
So let's talk about the outside of the car.
Outside of the car, I wanted to maintain it looking as stock as possible. I know that sounds stupid with half the motor hanging out of the hood, but we'll get there later. I wanted to resemble a car that I had in high school, you know, that I drove every day to school. So I kept the same car, same color, and didn't want it to make it look like a crazy drag car. When this project started, I wanted to be able to drive it around. You know, it was a street car at one point, so we just didn't want it to make it too extravagant. That's where it started, but you know, as you can see, it's kind of grown a little bit from there.
Yeah. I mean, this is a stock color.
BMW color, actually. This is Laguna Seca Blue. It resembles the car I had in high school, which is like a teal blue Mustang, but I had it painted Laguna Seca Blue. It had a history with BMW, so we decided to pick a pretty extravagant M3 color to throw on the car.
Yeah, it's definitely eye-catching. We'll get into this a little bit later, but yes, definitely.
Wheels, you know, set of 15-inch welds. Got a set of TBM brakes behind it. We could look more at that later. ET front runners. The back, we also have a set of welds. I had them bead locked by Champion. We were having a problem where the wheel and tire was spinning on each other at the track. So I had them bead locked. It's a Mickey Thompson 28-10.5W. So it's about an inch bigger than your standard 28-10.5. This would be considered a small tire car in any small tire class.
Looks almost like a standard street car.
Until you start getting to the back, I guess.
Yeah, the back kind of gives it away. I mean, got a wing back here.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've seen this car switch lanes at 175 mile an hour at the top of the track, so we were having a problem where the rear end of the car was wanting to lift. So we put the wing on it, and over 150 miles an hour, it puts a ton of downforce on the back of the car to keep the car planted in the back and not lift off the back of the ground without a wing.
Wow. You got to shoot because you're going over $150 then?
$150 or more.
Yep, and then the plate, awesome. And you got your shutoff right here.
Yeah, it's broken. That has hit the ground before. We could probably talk about that a little later, but it has drugged this bumper on the ground and ripped that clean off.
Sick. So yeah, then I guess we get to your office then.
And this is where all the hard work's done.
Oh, it's still got a dash in it.
It's got an AM/FM radio, CD player, Bluetooth, and a sunroof in there too, shockingly.
Yeah, that's pretty rad though.
It's up there.
Yeah. Cool.
Chassis-wise, interior, you know, Precision Products shifter. I don't have an air shifter, manually shift it. Roll cage inside is probably the most intense part. This is a 25.3 chassis cert roll cage. Good to 650 or slower, quarter mile. Yeah, it's what keeps me safe. We were going sevens with just an 850 cert roll cage, which is honestly a death wish. If this thing ever hit a wall at 190 miles an hour, I would, want it to be safe. And later on, when we look underneath the car, you'll see everything that's on the roof of this car right now inside is also replicated under the car. Inside, I have my line lock, my two-step, my data logger where I could see everything at the starting line, making sure I have the appropriate amount of boost before I leave the line, making sure my intake air temps are where I want, making sure the boost is what I have desired to leave the line. And that's where I'm at.
Very cool.
Then actually, if you want to circle around to the other side, I'll show you some cool stuff up front. Moving forward on the inside, and I think this is one of the biggest secrets of why this car is fast, is down there in the quarter hiding is Pro EFI engine management. This is literally everything. It does everything I want this car to do, including traction control, spark retard for the launch. We also run a G meter right here in the middle, and it measures acceleration of the car. So if the tire starts to haze, I could look at that data and remove or add timing to make sure the car still accelerates forward. And then the engine management itself is designed to protect the engine. So if we see a condition where oil pressure is starting to drop, if air fuel is going lean, if fuel pressure is starting to drop, this system can literally correct, either take it down to base boost, shut the engine off. I could kind of set all the parameters on what I want it to do.
Science.
Yeah.
All science. Your cert, and you got your chute.
pull right here?
That's the oh shit handle, especially at Irwindale. If you do not pull that at Irwindale, there's going to be some major problems at the end of the track. So any track, you know, trying to stop a car that's going this fast at this kind of weight, you know, it's safer just to throw the chute, save the wear on the brakes. But Irwindale, especially where we race every single Thursday, if we do not deploy that chute, this car will not stop at the end of the track. Also inside, I got a CO2 tank right there aiming at me. I'll get a little more into it when we talk about the engine, but that is really what keeps the boost under control. I will add an air shifter to it in the future when I got some time, but that is used to control the wastegates and the turbochargers to get the desired boost level. And that's also ran by Pro EFI, all in one box, no separate controllers or anything. It uses compressed air to operate those.
Let's get to the what we all want to know about.
All right. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Let's start at the heart of the beast, man. We have a late model engines, a 427 LSX. It is a GM performance block, LSX block. They offered a 1500 horsepower short block. I upgraded the rods to the 2500 horsepower rods because I knew I was gonna hit this thing with a ton of boost. So, you know, at the bottom of it, you know, Callie's Dragon Slayer crank, Dyer H-beam rods, and, you know, a set of diamond pistons built by LME. Cylinder head wise, anybody who knows LS engines, this is a Cathedral Port trick flow 245 cylinder head, so it is unheard of to go as fast as we do on the tracks that we do on this kind of cylinder head. This is an LS1 cylinder head, you know, tiny ports. Everybody who heard when I was building the motor, like, don't do that, that's never gonna work because of the size of the port. So working up, you know, Holley intake manifold, we went with the 417 Motorsport intercooler. We actually could go over to the trunk after, but I have a 5-gallon ice tank. So at the beginning of the pass, we packed this thing with ice to drop the intake air temps down to about 60 degrees. So when I leave the starting line, it stays cool all the way down the track. The headers, a set of Stainless Works headers out of the box. That brings us to the turbochargers. We're sitting on a set of precision 76 millimeter turbocharger, journal bearing, with a set of their CO2 controlled wastegates. So now, you know, as we looked inside, we have the tank in there. This is kind of what it does, is we're taking 80 PSI out of that bottle and sticking it on the top of the wastegate. Now, conventional boost control, you're only using what boost you have inside your manifold. Now I could stick more pressure on top. So if I want that boost, I get it now. It's able to control the tops of the wastegates better than, you know, your traditional boost control. Down here, we have an increase and decrease solenoid. So this is allowing CO2 to enter and allowing CO2 to exit. So you're coming up and you're paired into these, so it's pulsing to get the desired pressure. You know, looking a little further, you see some more Pro EFI sensors. I got a dome pressure sensor for the wastegate. I got back pressure sensors for the turbochargers, so we know if we have the same amount of pressure in front of the turbo as behind the turbo. Additionally, a radiator pressure sensor, and I love looking at that data because when I want to start throwing a ton of boost at it, I know when it's going to let a head gasket go if I start seeing a little bit of pressure introduce itself into the cooling system. Fuel system, we did a belt-driven fuel pump because nothing fuels a car better than something driven with engine RPM. So I'll never run out of fuel pump on this thing. Fuel injectors, I got a set of 2150 FIC fuel injector clinic fuel injectors running on E98 fuel. Everybody's familiar with E85. This is just a little more ethanol content. Smells a little funky, but as far as detonation, you don't see any, which is kind of a scary part. You know, you're never gonna actually detonate the motor, so you're probably gonna fold the rod over before you realize you did it. Cooling system, you know, pretty simple on this car. We have a radiator that's tilted forward. Same guy who did my fab work did everything at the same time. We tilted it forward through 2 big Mishimoto fans on it. So, you know, I have an electric water pump, electric fans. When I'm sitting in the pits, I could click on the switch, cool down the motor pretty quick. Definitely no cooling problems with this. The breathers, just 2 open air breathers, and you know, this is still a testament to late model engines actually also, is I clean those things, drain them every pass, you know, every time I take it out, and nothing ever comes out of them. So the ring seal on this motor is just on top of it. I have no vacuum pump. It seals great. So you'd expect breathers to be full of stuff, but the way they built this thing and gapped the rings, and you know, I'm no engine expert myself, but you know, this thing just literally gets put through the ringer every week, and I've yet to find a problem with it.
Yeah, what does this run?
So best 8th mile time on a drag radial currently is 5:01 at 148, 8th mile. On a slick, I've gone 5:044 at 147. Prior to any suspension modifications, quarter mile, it's gone 770, and that is literally blowing the tire off, getting in and out of it, and just sending it down the track.
So what is this maximum you could ever put out?
So the most this has ever seen on a dyno, it was on a Mustang dyno, my own dyno. It made 900 horsepower on gate spring of like 11 PSI, 10 PSI. I had it on slicks on the dyno. If everybody's seen the dyno disasters on slicks, it was probably the sketchiest thing I've ever done with this car. So everything I've done is I've done it at the track. Now mathematically, if you calculate the weight and the mile an hour, we're realistically looking at 1,500 horsepower on 22 to 25 pounds of boost. That's the most I've put into this thing, because if I can't get the 60 foot right, it makes no point to just, you know, put all the heat on the car on the top end. So I would imagine the most we could see out of this motor is probably 1,800 before I got to start upgrading stuff.
Whew. But it is beautiful. This thing is massive looking in here.
So out the side, we have our exhaust, 3 or 3.5 inch exhaust, and then next to it, almost the same size as a wastegate exhaust for it. So we'll throw it on the two-step later, but if you've ever seen this thing on the two-step, it's blowing flames out of both. So what's happening is you're getting your exhaust coming out of here, and then if it's more than I'm desiring on boost, that's where this wastegate's going to open and exit everything else over here. And talking turbocharger, the placement of the wastegate always has to prioritize straight from the exhaust to exit. So on both sides, if you cannot get the exhaust out of that turbo housing, it will spool till it makes, you know, these are good for 1,200 horsepower a piece, so it'll give you 2,500 horsepower worth of boost that you don't want.
Man, so here you have your intercooler.
Intercooler with some dash 16 lines. I want to say these lines, they've got to hold a gallon water themselves. It crossed through the intercooler. I'll show you in the back.
Yeah, because those are the hoses we saw in the interior.
Yeah, it goes all the way through. So we've got 2 cells back here. 10-gallon fuel cell, probably overkill, but again, when we wanted to street drive this car, we wanted a little bit more fuel. We have a 5-gallon ice tank, so this is what we were talking about, packing this thing. I'm talking we leave an inch of water in there and pack it with ice. Big Davies Craig pump off to the side that literally cycles this thing as it's going down the track. If I turn on the pump right after the burnout, I could get the intake air temps down to 60 to 80, just depending on the day and track conditions and how hot the motor is, and it continues to pump through the car and get everything out of it. So in between lanes, you know, in between passes, we could come drain the water out of here. This little valve drains it right underneath the car, and we pack it with more ice and keep it cold, and that's what keeps the motor from burning down as far as intake air temps.
So if on a pass, say it's 8th mile, will that melt all of it in there, or?
It's depending on boost. So at 26 pounds, you leave, you make your pass, you know, if you're ramping in your 26 pounds. At the end of the track, it does sound like a slushy machine. You hear a little bit of ice, but if you open it up, it is just water. Now, quarter mile, you're looking at warm water by the end of the pass, because you're hitting that thing pretty hard for, you know, 7 seconds is a long time for that thing to cycle. 8th mile, I'm okay. Quarter mile, you got to be really careful on keeping the water as low as possible and getting as much ice as possible and not flipping on that switch to the last minute possible. To make it down the track. But,
so,
yeah.
real quick question. You built this all in your shop, right?
I did. So, little over 2 years ago, my wife and I wanted to open a shop. So, it's called Accelerated Racing Solutions. It's just me and her and one other employee, and it's just a labor of love for us. I mean, we don't go to work. Like, we wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning talking about a customer car, and like, what are we going to build now? And we do a lot of the late model LS, LT stuff.
Sick. It's time we put on the lift. Let's go. First thing we will definitely note is that this is a functional race car, because you have half of a tire stuck to the back quarter panel. Oh, just
I lose a couple pounds, maybe go a little faster if I just got rid of how thick that was.
Wow, that's gnarly. So yeah, let's start from the rear. Let's talk about your rear suspension. This is pretty bananas.
Yeah, this would still be considered a stock style suspension. Nothing's really chopped out of the car. Starting point, you got a 48.8 rear end in there. Literally the one that came in this car factory in 1994. Original housing. First thing we do to something like this is we weld the axle tubes, because they had the tendency to twist, and you'll watch these pins right here knock themselves forward or backwards when it hooks. Inside I've got a spool a set of 35 spline axles, and just cover, all it's basically doing is holding the caps in from trying to push back when you accelerate. The rear end housing is completely stock, and then if you can see on the front side right here, we have some braces that actually stop the axles tubes from wanting to distort forward or backwards. It keeps them, you know, in place. There are some more extreme ones that go across the bottom, but this seems to work. On the front of the drive shafts, let's talk about the rear end. You're seeing this. This is the drive shaft speed sensor, and it's vital in the traction control. It's going to watch the front wheel speed and the rear wheel speed. So if the rear is starting to get more wheel speed than the front, the engine computer can pull timing out and keep you going down the track so you don't blow tires off. We reinforce the body. If you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a bunch of welds on all the body pieces. We weld these torque arms into the body as well as plate them, because if you think of what this rear end's trying to do as it's going down the track, it just wants to rip itself out of the car. What really stands out about this rear end and really makes this work is the arm angles. So let's talk just lower arm right here. From the factory, this arm's going to be sitting somewhere up right here, which gives you, you know, moves your instant center of the car basically. If we drop this arm angle down and play with the top, we're creating a really aggressive angle of the rear end, which pushes the instant center of the car further forward to keep the nose of the car down. Shocks got a set of AFCO double adjustables. You can adjust your rebound right here and your compression up here, as well as your ride height. Obviously with this, you just, you know, when the spring's on it, it's not going to really move anywhere. That's where a lot of the magic happens on these cars, is in the rear suspension.
Real quick though, I understand welding so the tubes don't twist.
Yeah.
What is this?
I used to have wheelie bars on it. So the wheelie bars would mount right here off these brackets and come here. Wheelie bars aren't allowed in a lot of the small tire class. People call them training wheels, sissy bars, all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of an old school big block Camaro, you know, 69 Camaro, stuff like that. But I had them on there when I didn't have proper suspension. So if you don't have a proper suspension, yeah, the quick way to combat it is throw a set of wheelie bars 6 feet off the back. It's going to hit them and push the front of the car down and send you on your way. When you have a proper chassis setup, it's night and day difference. And I literally took them off the second we did the chassis, and it has not wheelied since. Fuel lines, you can see this nice dash 16 feed fuel line. I step it down a little bit after the filter's on both sides. It's a dash 10 feed in the car. I haven't seen a problem with that yet, but we have a dash 16 going into the filter.
You have the crazy brake setup.
Yeah, we could look at those. TBM brakes, which I'll show you more in the front. These things just free spin. And this car, up until a couple weeks ago, had stock brakes from Napa. Right out of the box, I was going 180 miles an hour on stock brakes. So living life on the wild side with that.
Man, it is so clean on this car, really. I mean, it's clean. I mean,
so next thing, I mean, maybe to look at, we're looking at the chassis. We talked about inside the car. Everything that was inside the car is on the bottom. This goes along with that 25.3 chassis cert. I would consider this almost like your life module, right? You have a cage on the top of the car and the bottom of the car. If you have any impact from the sides, you hit the wall, it's protecting you pretty much. So this is required of that chassis cert. You can't have any square steel tubing. So I had subframe connectors that ran this distance. We chopped them off and made them part of the chassis. Trans, Power Glide, 2-speed, 180 first gear by FTI Performance over in Florida, paired with a Pro Torque torque converter. Bolt together. You know, people probably wonder what the bolt together torque converters are. Number one, if you scatter a trans, you need to clean it. You can unbolt it rather than cutting it open and get it welded. The transmission itself, you can see it's got an aftermarket case. This isn't a factory case. If you look how thick everything is. Yeah. We don't want transmission parts going through our legs if we ever were to scatter a transmission, so it is aftermarket certified. This piece right here is just, you know, an awesome piece of equipment right here.
Wait a minute.
You know,
that's a paperclip, buddy.
I think it's Office Depot special, you know. So sometimes we're at the track and things break and you got to come up with ideas to fix it, and shift linkage came apart. Had a paper clip, threw it in there, figured it hasn't broken yet, so let's just go ahead and leave it there. Don't fix it till it's broke, right? So yeah. This has a nice coated white Office Depot paper clip in there holding it.
Science.
It works, science. Right? Going forward, oil pan. Interesting deal here. This is a stock oil pan off of a Copo Camaro. So this is like literally, you could buy it at the dealer if you really wanted to, but Moroso makes it for their Copo Camaros. It happened to fit perfectly with the steering and everything, so we throw it on there. It holds an extra quart of oil. This pan holds 7 compared to the traditional 6. Steering rack, manual steering, nothing special there. And then we can kind of move over to some of the fun stuff up here. First thing, I mean, we could probably start talking for 10 minutes watching what these brakes and wheel bearings do. It's the TBM brakes, super low resistance, pads suck out of it. Just, you know, going down the racetrack, you don't want it to be slowing you down if your pads are dragging or anything like that. We got a set of Viking double adjustable front struts in there. You can adjust rebound and compression to try to control the wheelies. This was another big game changer that we did over LP Racing as well too, is the front suspension had too much travel. So too much travel allows too much weight transfer and sticks the nose of the car into the air. So by limiting the travel down to 4 inches, it keeps the car going forward. And, you know, go back to that wheelies don't win races. We do not want to go up. And then you could just look at this nightmare of stuff from the bottom, all the stuff going on, your turbochargers, your drain lines, fuel lines, coils, you know, all the stuff that's hidden. You can't see, you can see the radiator maybe a little more under here, but it is tucked away in the front bumper.
Man, so much, I mean, there's so much stuff happening in this car. Do you ever stay up at night and just obsess over it still? Or is it?
You stay up all night trying to fix something or get it right or get it ready for the race, but I mean, it's building a car like this, you don't just do it all at once, I guess. I did a bunch of little pieces to it. You know, you have a problem where we wheelied and the car would steer when it wheelie, we'd add a bump steer kit in it. It was wheeling too much, you gotta add a better shock to slow down the travel. Trying to stop on stock brakes doesn't work very well, you gotta put real brakes on it. So this car didn't get to where it's at today, like, hey, I'm gonna build this badass race car. It just, you kind of go through the growing pains of building the car and learning what works and doesn't. And I always go by that theory, is if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Wow. That's awesome, man. Thank you very much for showing us everything. Like, this is the side of, like, this is the view from a race car that no one ever gets to see.
Yeah,
like,
no one knows what's actually going together under there and doing it. And, you know, just like the top of the car, I think the underneath side of the car has just as many cool features, you know. It's just no one expects to have this kind of chassis under the car as it does on the inside. People just throw a roll bar in it and that's it. This one would be considered a chassis car because it's got a lot more going on than just a factory, you know, front and rear suspension deal.
Yeah, no, and thank you for sharing, because a lot of people, especially in drag racing, like to keep a lot of secrets. So.
Yeah, that's been my motto even with my shop. A lot of people street race and no time race, which is cool. It's a great sport. I want to give it its all. I want everybody to know what the car has. So if they want to build it, mimic it, you know, they have questions. I'm not one to hide anything. I literally will share this thing with everybody.
Well, thanks for bringing it by. It's very informative. I mean, the suspension discussion you had was enough right there to, like, really explain why wheelies don't win races. So real quick, let's do an audio check and actually see what this thing sounds like. You down?
Let's do it.
All right.
A wheelie picture starts at $1,000 because that's your oil pan. Like, I laugh when people are like, "That's a cool picture." I'm like, "That's $1,000."